I'm here with Everett Weston, who Bravo viewers will recognize from Summer House. He's been on all 3 seasons. So, before we talk a little bit about Summer House, let's talk a bit about when you decided you wanted to enlist in the Army. I know that's a huge part of who you are and what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. So I think my interest in the Army was really spurred very early on when I was growing up. My dad was always very interested and took me to a lot of West Point games growing up and whatnot. We lived in Connecticut. But it didn't really come crystallized as something I wanted what I wanted to do until 9/11. And at that time I was a junior in high school. I was getting ready to pursue a collegiate career in sports in college, and then that 9/11 happened and directly impacted my community in Stamford, Connecticut, and Greenwich, and friends of my families of my friends were lost, and it just created this anger in me, and I was.
There was probably, there was a great influx of younger people going into the armed services, despite whatever branch, because of 9/11. Did you find that a lot when you enlisted for people your age?
Yeah.
That's the reason they were joining?
Yeah, it was definitely a common thread among the folks that decided to join the military. I had thought about actually going directly enlisted, but my father gave me a pause to think better of it, and I actually wound up doing ROTC in college. And so I was actually commissioned as an officer when I graduated college, and then went in shortly thereafter and was in charge of leading troops.
What was your major in college?
Studied economics.
And you're a business person now,
Yeah.
right now. In addition to Summer House, like your actual real life.
Yeah. I work in the financial technology world now. What can I tell you about economics? Very little, except what supply and demand is. But that's really my only takeaway from that, anyway. So, I work in financial technology. I work in enterprise sales now. So I'm a salesman. This is kind of like the next chapter in my life as I got out of the Army about 6 years ago.
So obviously there was no hesitation with you joining the Army. It was something that you felt you were called to do because of the tragic events of that day. When you were put in charge of the troops, did you realize the magnitude of what you were getting into?
Yeah, I definitely did realize that. It was it's a privilege and an honor and a responsibility that I don't think many that I could think of would supersede. I was directly in charge of men's lives who looked to me for leadership and guidance, especially in times of peril, and helping them manage their day-to-day affairs. And as a young 23-year-old, it's a tremendous amount of responsibility.
Big weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, it was. And but I was up for the task. It was something that I wanted to do for myself and to learn about what kind of man I was and serve my country more than
that was sure teach you what kind of man you are.
Yeah,
I think it already says a lot about you that you were willing to do that at 23 to begin with. So I think you already have the foundation there to what kind of man you are.
Yeah, well, it's it's one thing, I guess, to talk the talk and walk the walk's another, but doing that and having the opportunity to walk that walk alongside 30 guys who came from all different walks of life, ranging from guys from Central America working to earn their citizenship through service, to guys who are 10 years older than me who had been on multiple combat deployments, to guys that couldn't even get their GED. But is being able to work with guys from literally every corner of the country and from all sorts of different backgrounds. I mean, that's what leadership is being able to figure out common ground between different types of people and motivate them and all work towards a common goal. And it was we had a really strong team, and I had a really strong group of NCOs that worked with me that really helped make my job easy.
How long after you enlisted did you end up going over to Afghanistan and for Iraqi freedom?
So I graduated college May of 2007, and I was in Iraq April of 2008.
Wow. So that was not a very long
Quick
time
turn.
after,
Quick turn. About a week after I graduated, I was in Fort Sill, getting trained on basic officer leadership courses. Went to Missouri to learn about explosives and how to clear roadside bombs and things of that nature, which wound up being my main mission in Iraq. And then after all that was done, we were deployed overseas about 5 months later after I concluded that. So,
what was the toughest part for you about being deployed? Was it that you were going to be away from your family, that you were going into uncertain territory, that you didn't know whether you're coming back? Was it all just a big bomb of like nerves, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think going overseas, I remember when I was on the C-130 going from Kuwait into Iraq and looking at one of the other platoon leaders and kind of surveyed him, like, are you nervous? And he was like, no. And asked me if I was nervous, and I was like, no, not really. And it took me years later to try and consider why that was, given, what we're going into, leading combat missions to go find IEDs and could die at any point in time. And
right.
I think it says a lot about kind of like what the human psyche does when going into a threat zone like that. For me, my theory is that I just built up this shield, more or less, that prevented me from really allowing myself to feel certain things. And because at the end of the day, these troops are going to be looking at me, these soldiers, for guidance and leadership, and if I'm scared, if I'm having an emotional breakdown, and what are they going to do? And so I think I just built this wall, this emotional wall that really prevented me from feeling things to a certain degree, and that took a long time to come down. After I got back home also, it took a considerable amount of time and work. So I think back to your question, the biggest thing that was difficult was the unknown, and being away from family and friends. That was definitely the hardest part. I was in Iraq for 16 straight months, basically, with only a 3-week vacation after 12 months.
Yeah.
And I guess the flip side of that is you become used to a simplicity of life. Life is all about your mission and your guys, and there's no white noise, as I call it, like we're so often subjected to here in New York. And there's a certain beauty about that. And I think life gets really boiled down to the basic necessities, and you think about survival, and you think about your guys next to you, and waking up each day and just going about your affairs. And that simplicity with how life becomes is difficult to retranslate when you move back into civilian life.
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that we'll get into later, because your foundation, that's a huge basis for the foundation. When you were over there, you said you were looking for IEDs. Were you the ones that were actually like looking in terms of in that big suit where
like the hurt locker?
Yeah, the hurt locker. Yeah.
Yeah, when people ask me about it, I think seeing Jeremy Renner's work in that movie is the closest thing that I can give from like a Hollywood viewpoint. They do a pretty good job. That's close to what we do.
Yeah.
My responsibility, as described by the generals of Iraq, is to facilitate freedom of maneuver for coalition forces. So basically what that means is to go up and down the roads, make sure there's no ordnance, explosives, ensure that coalition forces can traffic those roads without any kind of hindrance. And really what that meant for us was going and driving at a snail's pace with our lights off in the middle of the night and using night vision goggles to try to detect little disturbances in the earth. Where a bomb would be planted, and then using machines and robots and C4 to blow them up.
That must fuck with your entire headspace, just the fact that you're doing everything in the dark through those night vision glasses. Like, your reality must just seem so distorted, and that must be something to adjust to as well.
Oh, for sure. Those are things that hopefully you overcome during training, where you acclimate to using night vision goggles, and so you become more accustomed to it. But for sure, it's always weird to see things in like different shades of green versus normal. But it's a hairy job, and I got hit by a few bombs over there, and it definitely impacts one's central nervous system
Yeah.
and your ability to just kind of respond to things going
Right.
forward. So yeah, it was definitely a wild experience.
This may sound like a completely asinine question, but did your size make you a bigger target because you were? I mean, you're a tall dude. It's
Yeah.
not like you're not going to easily hide behind a rock or anything.
Yeah, well, fortunately, these missions were all done with huge trucks,
Okay.
armored trucks, and so my size was kind of sucked because I was jammed into these huge trucks, and my knees were always against the dashboards. But outside of that, they couldn't really tell if I was 6'5"
Gotcha.
versus 5'6". So didn't really impact me from that regard, since most of our operations were mounted patrols.
What was the hardest thing that you had to deal with while you were over there?
Oh boy.
And if anything's too personal, please feel free to move the conversation away from it.
Sure. Yeah, I think the hardest thing was when on my 156th mission, which was around November of 2018, I broke my arm in 3 pieces on a mission, and they were getting ready to basically send me back on medical leave back to the United States through Germany to heal up. And the thought of not seeing this deployment through and not being there to be with my guys that we started this journey out on, to not be there to coach them and guide them regardless of who was going to be taking over for me, because I couldn't be on missions anymore for a long time.
Right.
So I got really upset with that, and even though they had me in a little kind of hospital in the middle of Iraq, they had me all doped up on drugs, painkillers and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're getting ready to fly me out to Germany. I just caught the attention of any field grade officer that would listen, and I just was like, I'm not going. I refuse to go. I won't go. And eventually I got through to the right person, my brigade commander, and I just conveyed to him that, I didn't come here to get sent home. Like, I'm here to stick this out. And the thought of leaving before I'd finished what I came to do was very frustrating. But fortunately, I was able to turn it around and kind of make a positive of it, because after that, I was able to be a liaison for my brigade commander that I got through to, and helped not only provide him guidance on the battlefield based on my knowledge, but also serve as a mentor to the new lieutenant who was coming to replace me, given that I was in charge of a pretty squirrely gang of dudes. That they're a bunch of ruffians, but helping be able to coach from the sideline and just make sure that was a successful transition as much as I can, because at the end of the day, there's no room for errors, because a mistake can cost someone a life. So
You mentioned that you had been affected and hit with bombs. In that moment when it happens, are you just so disoriented that you have, or are you just like, oh my God, this just fucking happened, but I need to get my shit together and come back to earth real quick and get myself either out of there or make sure the guys are okay? Is that what goes through your head?
Yeah, so we're trained to just react. We have battle drills that go into effect where if you get attacked, depending on the severity of the attack, we would do different things. So it's like basically it's like a football quarterback calling an audible at the line of scrimmage. Like the whole offense knows the plays. And so when we got hit, I remember, the whole cabin was filled with smoke. Tires were shredded from the shrapnel. And first thing was just to check my gunner, check my driver, make sure they're good, they're conscious, they're with us. And then next thing is survey for secondary weapon systems around us. They're clear. Okay, those out there are assault through. Let's keep driving through the kill zone, because we're in the kill zone, and we have to get out of that. And I remember getting ready to move, and all right, keep moving. And my platoon sergeant gets on the radio, and he's like, negative, sir, I'll stop. We are not moving anywhere. Your truck is fucked up. And little did I know, I was extremely concussed, and me and the other guys had kind of blood coming out of our ears. But that's just what we're taught. We're taught to revert to what happens after an event, and then you've got a support system around you to like my platoon sergeant and squad leaders who based on what they can see outside of my truck, they'll make the call, and that's why we have chain of command also. Like, I've been compromised, my truck's been compromised, so now somebody else is going to call the shots. So that's all about just practice and training. But
does the outside noise go away? Like, oh my God, I just got hit my family, my this, my that at home, or do you have to kind of wrestle with both demons, the military side of it, and then like, oh shit, my family on it, or is there's no thought going? It's just fight or flight, right?
It's yeah, I think it's just fight or flight. I never gave a moment's thought to anything outside of what was in my immediate purview. Yeah, and I think that's I remember like during my training out in Missouri, one of the things that one of the young lieutenants asked our old grizzled instructor, is like 20 years in, a guy named Captain Urqueta, and he asks him, he's like, Captain Urqueta, how do you do these operations knowing that at any point in time you could die? And he's like, well, Lieutenant, when it's your day, it's your day, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I kind of incorporated that adage into my thought process a bit, because there's really so many things that we control in our lives, and there's a lot of things that we can't. And if there's a bomb that's going to go off, like, and you can't see it, you can't worry about it.
You just pray that it takes you out
exactly
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did you end up staying over in Iraq? Like, how long was your tour?
I was there for about almost 16 months.
Okay. And when you came back, did you deal with PTSD? Like, your foundation, that's one of the biggest reasons that you founded this, was to help soldiers who have PTSD.
Yeah.
Was it something you had to deal with, or was it more acclimating to being back home?
So I dealt with things when I got home, the transition process, but I didn't understand how I was dealing with them really until one of my buddies killed himself. And
this was someone you served with, right?
yeah, one of my good buddies, Captain Frankie Kim. And when I got home, I talked about that emotional wall that I put up to better deal with responses overseas and how I would react to those things. I remember my mom, when I came home, my mom came out to Seattle where I was living at the time, and she could tell that I was different. Like, she could tell that I didn't have the same emotional responsiveness to things, and she was worried that I wouldn't be able to love somebody again. And so I remember that time pretty clear in my mind. And that was when I began to start thinking about, like, okay, like, why am I doing these things? What's going on with me? And I remember, like, I turned to drinking for a long time to use that as a tool to cover up whatever I was feeling inside. And I kind of just kept on going my way, but it was really only after my buddy Frankie killed himself, which was about 2 years after I got out. And that was a big wake-up call, because that was like, I mean, it caught us all off guard.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew Frankie was suffering, but we didn't know how badly he was suffering. And then when we lost him, all of a sudden it made me take a real hard look inside to get a better understanding of what I was dealing with. And that's when I first decided to go start speaking with a professional, a therapist, about it.
Was it hard to find somebody who was able to, I guess, not empathize, because you have to find a therapist that was actually in the military to empathize with you? But did you have a challenge opening up right off the bat, or was it something you knew, like, shit, if I don't do this, like, hopefully I don't go down that same road?
It was something that I decided to just do for myself, to try it out. And there's a couple organizations that are out there that so they say, like, provide more curated programs for veterans. The one that I went through, like, I didn't think did a very good job of it. It was, I had a finite amount of time to be fixed, essentially, fixed as they call it. And then as we got towards the end, it was basically like I had to give up drinking, like, forever, or else, like, I'm damned, or something like that. It was just like, it was such a black and white approach that really didn't resonate well with me, and kind of turned me off. And like, what am I doing here? Like, at the end of the day, I'm like not an alcoholic. Maybe I'm abusing alcohol, but that's not.
But that doesn't
like
make you an alcoholic, right?
we're talking about different things here. I later got connected with an organization called the Headstrong Project, who has become one of the biggest benefactor of my fundraising efforts for Operation Heal Our Heroes. And what they do really well is they provide therapy programs to veterans anonymously, no questions asked, and they provide them based on what the need is for that respective veteran, because there's no cookie cutter answer for mental health. And so for some folks, they'll get like group therapy sessions with a bunch of other veterans. Others will just be one-on-one, or maybe it's an intake program, or it's they figure out what the right recipe is. And since I started using their services that we've been helping fund, I've noticed a lot of big impact and change for me, because I've been able to work with somebody that understands veterans and their specific plights and how that fits into the whole mental health conversation. And based on his experience, he's being able to bring some things that he's learned from working with vets to me, which makes sense. And then it's just facilitated this great process of self-discovery and helped me really hone in on areas where I struggle. And one of those is managing my anger. And over the last couple of years since I've been working on this, like I can now figure out my trigger points and identify them before they become, eruptive.
Was that something that developed because you went in the service, or did you have anger issues before?
I would say that I think I've always had a predisposition to it, but it was exacerbated from my time in the military, and it was
with good reason.
Yeah, and I would have reactions sometimes that, like, the crime didn't fit the punishment, and so it was really starting to trace those and benchmark those and understand those and figure out like what's contributing to those. That has allowed me to basically alter my behavior and just become better.
I think one of the things, at least personally for me, I also suffer from PTSD, not from war. It doesn't make it any less challenging mental health wise. I think people don't understand that it's not just one trigger, and like the way you react is because of what happened. It's almost like putting a wall up to protect yourself again from being re-traumatized and re-triggered and all that other stuff. But did you find working one-to-one was better for you than working in a group? I know group for me was, for what I was dealing with, hearing other men talk about it was beneficial to me.
I think that I think both have been helpful. It's been helpful for me to hear from other vets and kind of like that more group setting, and kind of have others that can directly empathize with what I've been going through. I think for me the most helpful has been the one-on-one sessions, just because that's enabled me to really dive deep in myself and selfishly just focus on what I want to talk about. And for me, it's having that continuity has been helpful, because I can look at things that happened over the last couple weeks and then see and then talk through what happened and measure not only my emotions during that event and what they look like, but also like how do I feel now about those, and then just kind of build upon those each session and just get a lot of data points to be able to track things really.
Do you have to work extra hard now because of the climate of our country? Do things that are said trigger you as much as being in combat? What triggered you from being in combat? Is it the same thing where you have to? Obviously, words are not the same as being in war. I'm not sure. It's really not a good comparison. But do you feel that you have to really suppress the anger that you have due to things that are said in this day and age, whether they be about soldiers or about a person in general? I try to keep this as unpolitical as
Yeah,
possible, but
yeah.
I know that.
Well, I think that like I've always found myself being somebody that stands up for what's right, and whether that's someone just being disrespectful or just treating someone poorly, like on a subway or just out in public or at a bar or whatever the case. I always seem to be like I'm the person that stands up and be like, hey man, like shut up.
Same.
Or and
It's usually not to our betterment.
no, it's not, because then like someone will talk back and then like my 0 to 100 goes like
real
that.
quick. And then the phones are already out recording you. And
Yeah,
it's
So it's like
disaster.
it's my 0 to 100 that goes fast.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. So, I think for me, it's just, I need to learn that it's not, everything's not my fight.
Yeah. Same lesson that I need to.
And I just, I focus on the things that I can positively impact.
How far into your dealing with your own personal demons and dealing with the suicide of your friend did you realize, there's really a stigma around this and there's not enough conversations happening? And what made you want to start obviously we know what made you want to start the foundation, but when did you realize that the conversations were just not enough anymore and you had to put yourself out there?
Well, it was really in the months shortly after Frankie died in early 2014, and during that time where I started just talking to other people as a method of therapy, I guess, for myself, to just kind of like see what other people were thinking about this. And during that time, I realized that as I made this discovery of myself and my own issues that I was not acknowledging, I realized that this is something that tons of veterans are going through. And oh, by the way, we're losing 22 veterans a day to suicide.
Which is, 22 doesn't sound like a huge amount, but that's 22 people.
Yeah.
That died because of serving their country, and because of what happened to them being over there, over wherever they were. So 22 is a huge number in terms of the reason that it's happening, the reason they're doing it. Did you feel that? Did you know the number was that high when you first started the foundation, based on talking to other guys that have gone through similar bouts of PTSD, or was it something that jumped out at you when you started the foundation?
Well, it was. I think they're kind of they're kind of the same. They're kind of overlapped. It was my inventory of the landscape, the veteran landscape, that made me more aware of how pervasive these issues are when it come to mental health, and that veteran in that demographic of like late 20s, early 30s is 300% more likely to take their own lives than somebody who hasn't served. And just getting better acquainted with the statistics around these things and talking to other veterans, I realized that I had to do something about it, or I felt the need to do something about it. And so when we launched this effort, which was December 4th, 2014, it was a year of the day of when we buried Frankie, and it was initially designed to, our goal was, if from our efforts from this event, if we could serve as a beacon to veterans to help them understand that it's okay to ask for help, that they're not in this alone, or to civilians to help them understand what veterans are going through, to just help facilitate a conversation. And from that kind of conversation, if we can create a bridge to get people the help they need, and we can save one veteran from that, then everything we've done is worth it. So that was our goal when we started out. We were aware of the stats, and we wanted to communicate those stats to a wider population of people. And in our first event, that it was mostly civilians that were there, but we really ignited the room and the group, and we had so many people come up to us afterwards saying, I had no idea about the depth of these issues, I want to do more to help, or I've got a friend or family member that's suffering, thank you, I now know what to say to them, I didn't before. And hearing all that stuff, I was like, damn, like this is big, we're on to something, like we need to do this. And so that was when, a year later is when I was like, all right, let's make this a thing, a real thing. And that's when I made it a formal nonprofit. I got our 501c3 distinction, became incorporated in New York, and all that good stuff. And then we just kind of started putting the flag up where we could and where we had the bandwidth to do so. It's my only my only frustration is that I don't have more time to put into this, because it's I don't take any money from it. I just take personal satisfaction from trying to help out my fellow vets.
Right.
And that's but it's been a good journey. And it's, the last 5 years or so we've thrown events in Seattle and LA and Tampa, numerous throughout New York. We've got plans in place for North Carolina, for DC, and really what we want to do is help veterans understand through HOH that there's help out there, that there are people like you that are suffering silently and don't know where to get help, and we want to be the acronym that every veteran knows to turn to when they go from a serviceman or woman to a veteran. HOH is where they look to get help.
Have you ever had someone come to you personally that said, I was going to commit suicide if I didn't get the help from you guys that you were offering?
Yeah, we did.
What does that feel like, knowing that, like you said, you started this even with the hope of helping one person, and you've now helped obviously countless people, but to have somebody come up to you and say that to your face, like you're staring at this person that is still here because of you.
Yeah.
What does that feel like?
Man, it's tough. It's hard to describe, to be honest. It makes me feel proud that we're putting things in place that can really help save people. And one example is from the show, and the platform that we leveraged to be able to widen the distribution of our message. We had multiple spouses of servicemen and women reach out to me. One sticks out in particular. Her husband was active duty in the Army, suffering from alcoholism, depression, from losing his brothers in arms in combat or to suicide. And he couldn't get the help they needed from the Army, and they were struggling to find the money to get a private program through a therapy dog program to be able to help guide him out of his quagmire. And we got connected with her, and we helped basically fund their program, and he was able to right the ship, to get back on his feet, to complete a successful retirement, and start a new life in the civilian world. And that's what makes it all worth it, is knowing that we're able to do stuff like that for folks.
And the show that you said was Summer House, were there any apprehensions about going on a reality show, or had you already known some of the people? I know you're friends with Kyle, who was just out of benefit the other night, to help raise awareness. Was there any apprehension about going on something like that?
Yeah. Definitely 100%.
In hindsight, or even before this?
No, in hindsight, I think it was fine. Outside of the show making me look a little bit like a psychopath, but that's par for the course. No, I think my only apprehension going into it was just, is this gonna be the end of my corporate career? And that was a major concern, because at the time I was still finding my way in the corporate world, post-military, and trying to figure out where I fit in this whole scheme, and that was definitely a concern. But one of the driving reasons that I decided to do the show was because it was an opportunity to bring this message to more people, and I kind of viewed it as a little bit of a golden parachute that would, a little bit of a insurance policy. Whereas if they've made me look really, really bad, I still had this, altruistic endeavor.
Look, I'm really not that bad. Look what I'm doing outside.
Okay, you can edit me all you want, but the same day I'm still trying to save vets. So screw you guys.
Were there any desires for you to kind of not branch out from that show, but maybe look into developing your own reality show or documentaries or anything like that?
Yeah.
To really put out, I mean, I know you do interviews like this one to raise awareness as well, but in a larger format, a larger platform, is that something you are interested or actually pursuing at this point?
Yeah, so good question. So, with that show, one of the reasons I also did that show is just because it was a bunch of my friends. Like, it was my crew of folks from New York, and that was kind of what made it easy. From that show, I've had one of the creators from that show actually approached me about doing a show about what veterans are doing post-service and how they're kind of making it in the corporate world. And it was an idea he had. He's been really bogged down, so we haven't really developed it too much further outside of us meeting to talk about it over steak once. But I think there's interest out there because I think there's an appetite in the community out there to get a better understanding of what veterans are all about and what they're doing. But unless people just lie to me about it all the time, right. But I think no. I would, for the right opportunity and the right outcome, I would love to make foray back into the reality TV world to continue on this mission
and make it actually real.
Yeah.
100% real instead of some some parts of it being manufactured or things going a certain way. But it's great that you're still friends with the people that are still on.
Yep.
I know your ex was at the event that we were at the other night.
Lindsay. Yep.
Lindsay,
She's
so that's
doing
nice
well.
that she supported you in that.
Yeah, it's nice. We were great friends before we became boyfriend girlfriend, and she's always been a big supporter of me and the nonprofit. She's got a brother that was an Army Ranger. So she's always done a ton on that front, and very appreciative of her for all of her support always. And Carl, another guy. His grandfather was a Marine, so he's always been very, very enthusiastic, trying to help out as much as he can. It's nice to always. I mean, that's one of the great things about this organization is it gives people the opportunity to contribute however they want to do so and provide value and widen the network of what we're trying to deliver.
Right.
So.
And you have an event this weekend, right?
Yeah, we sure do. Very excited about it. It's our annual 5K race out in Montauk. It's called the Survivor Series, and I actually created this event because of the TV show, because I wanted to make sure there was something to place my stamp on this show when it came to HOH. So I created this 5K race out. It's a trail run out in Navy Beach side of Montauk. It's a really, really cool run, super fun, very challenging and exciting and fun. Kind of gives you a taste of some of the military training that we used to do, which is I kind of crafted it to be like that. And then we've got a team-oriented challenge portion at the end. And then we've got an after party later on with a huge pig roast and open bar at Hero Beach Club. Our friends there hosting an event for us. So
nice.
That's on Saturday, July 27th.
Now Kyle and Carl going to get their hair wet and their hands dirty and actually do the thing, or are they lending their celebrity to the after bar?
Yeah, so Carl's doing it. Carl's doing the race. Lindsay's also said she's doing the race this year, as well as the new guy in the show, Luke, who I met the other day. Really nice guy. Kyle can't do it. I think his parents are in town that weekend, so he's got some filming to do with them, and he's sad he'll miss it. But I'm glad to have Carl and Lindsay there to support. Carl's done it every year.
Yeah.
He always puts his foot down with the production team. He's like, I'm going to this event.
Now, can you say whether you'll be back for the next season, or you're not allowed at liberty to say right now?
I would imagine I'll probably make a cameo here and there. I think I've moved on a little bit from focusing on other things in my life. My job at Rapid Ratings, working on HOH, a couple other early phase business ideas and plans that I'm working on. But I'll probably make. I seem to keep making my appearances woven in there, so it wouldn't surprise me if you see me again.
Can you see yourself transitioning out of working full time for a 9-to-5 job to transition all the way into giving 100% of your time and attention to the foundation, or do you like to keep a balance of both?
Good question. People ask me that a lot, actually.
And it's not a good question.
Yeah. Well, I think it is a good question, and I think one of the reasons people ask me that is because they see how passionate I am about this, and they see the impact that we're making from it, and I think at the end of the day, I would love to do more, but I got to figure out a way to make a living too.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So if I can get this organization past a certain inflection point to where we're raising millions of dollars a year, and I can reasonably justify paying myself an income to do that, and the ROI is there, then I could do it, and because I would take great passion and I'd find a lot of energy in doing that. But I think that's a few years down the road right now. What I'm trying to do right now is just put more systems into place. I've got a great team of interns that are working for me now, pro bono, which is awesome. So we're putting new marketing tools in place and technology functions just to become more efficient with our time, because time is the most valuable currency as far as I'm concerned.
That's right,
So we're just trying to work smarter, not harder, and grow this thing to every corner of the country. And I think for the next phase of this organization's growth, what I'm trying to do is create junior chapters in some of those places I talked about, like the West Coast or Chicago or DC or Atlanta, and I've really been able to cultivate people that want to help out, whether they're veterans or civilians, and I'm ideally trying to bring teams together of both, and basically provide them with the tools and the blueprint to start raising funds and awareness in their respective locales. So that's my plan for the next few years, is to grow it like that, and then we'll see where we are, I guess.
I've been noticing your bracelet. Is that something that you got in the service?
Oh,
green one, or is it
this one?
Commemorated? Yeah, that one.
Yeah. So this is didn't get this in the service. We made this through one of our partners, actually, called Handmade for Heroes, and these guys employ veterans that are looking for work, and it's pretty cool. Each one that's made comes with a little tag from who the veteran is that made it, what their story was, what they did in the Army or whatever service branch they're in, and they customize them so we can just get like the HOH tag on there.
Very cool.
So we sell those things now on our soon-to-be launched revised website.
Okay.
And
it's going to be the same address, because I'm going to link.
Yeah.
It's going to be the same address.
Yep.
Okay.
OperationHOH.com. We have all our basic information up there right now, but we'll be putting basically like a merchandise shop on there in the next couple months. So,
if you're having a day where you're so stressed and you feel like you're slipping back into any of the behaviors that you've been working so hard for to overcome, just having something like that bracelet around you, even if it's just to like tactile, to touch it and that kind of thing, does that help?
Yeah, I think it does. That's actually one of the reasons I wear it. It's I've long thought about getting a tattoo. I'm one of the only guys in the Army not to have a tattoo.
You're talking
you got a few.
Yeah. I was never in the military.
No, I thought about getting something like that to remind myself during those times of, not weakness, but difficulty.
There's no weakness about anything that you've done in your life.
Yeah.
Or any soldier that has done in their life.
No, I appreciate
to go
that.
fight for their country. There's not an ounce of weakness. Not coming back and having PTSD, not having to have therapy. That's not weakness. That's like you gave the ultimate sacrifice, and this is now a consequence of said sacrifice.
No, you're right. That's well said. But I think to your point, it's if I'm just getting stressed or anything like that, and I think things are a little too overwhelming. Looking at this thing on my wrist does provide me context that at the end of the day we're on a mission to do good, and it's only a matter of how much good we're going to do. We're certainly not going to do bad, so it definitely keeps me going.
It's just little things. I have a rock in my pocket. When the program that I was in, they give you a graduation rock.
Nice.
You know, and everybody wishes you well, and you know what they've learned from you, this, that, and the other thing, and they give it to you to take with you. So now that grounds me if I'm like having a stressful
That's cool.
commute, or you know, or if I'm gonna have a panic attack over something.
Yeah.
To just have something to touch and spin around in your hand really makes all the difference sometimes.
Totally.
To get yourself grounded again.
Totally. Yeah. And well, for this weekend, for everybody who comes to our race, we're making little special HOH dog tags. So
Oh, very cool.
We'll be handing those out to people for anyone.
Will they be available to purchase on the site if people can't?
Yeah. Any extras that we have, we'll definitely put them on the website as well.
That's very
No doubt.
cool.
Yeah.
So, everything is linked here in the interview, so go check out Everett's website. This is an extremely important cause. There's probably nothing more important than people getting the recognition that they deserve for fighting for our country. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and from everybody who lives in this country should be thanking you as well.
Thank you, Brian.
I very much appreciate your time, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Everett.